where are you at in your life? Are you happy with it? And then you can kind of put those two and say, what do I need to change within my current circle to really get myself prepared for the next one? I love video games, so I'm gonna do a Mario reference.
Okay.
So basically, it's like getting that mushroom. It's like you're tiny Mario, and that mentor is gonna help you get that mushroom to level up.
There you go.
And get to the bigger version of yourself.
So you're telling people to go out and get mushrooms?
No.
What kind of podcast is this? Welcome to Change Agent Podcast. I'm Nathan Lesnowski. I'll be your host today. On the Change Agent Podcast, we talk about the transformative impact of technology with business leaders who are doing awesome things in their organizations. We've had wonderful guests on this program. We've talked about the transformation of payment industry, of AI, of business intelligence, of moving to the cloud, enacting huge M&A transactions, and today is no different. Today we're going to have a great conversation about changing your life, changing your circle with Jamar Jones. Jamar Jones is the founder of Foureva Media.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Such a good entrance. Thank you for having me on here and really considering me as a change agent. You know, I'm just trying to play my part, man. That's it.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
You know, your book, Change Your Circle, Change Your Life. You know, tell me about this. Like, why not a triangle? Why not a square? Like, why is it a circle? Like, what does the circle mean? Like, what exactly is that?
Yeah, I mean, I really chose a circle just because of, like, you know, usually you go into your circle of influence, or usually have a circle of friends, you know, a circle of people that are in your life, and it's kind of looked at as like, that's within my peripheral of what I'm used to and what's in my environment. Mm-hmm. A triangle would just be kind of weird. A square would be like, no one wants to be a square.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm like, hey, a circle would be great. And it's something that's commonly used. So a circle is really evaluating your current circle and then how to get into new ones. And it's just really important because a lot of times people are not thinking of their life that way. You know, they're just kind of going through the motions, and they don't really take a step back and say, wait, who is in my circle? Who am I interacting with on a consistent basis? You know, who's really influencing my decisions? A lot of times people are just kind of going through the day, and then all of a sudden they blink and like, why am I here? What got me here? And it's really a lot of the choices that you made and the people that you were around.
Oh, it's really interesting. One of the reasons I was so excited to have you on is because I feel like change agents, one of the greatest qualities they need to have is being self-aware.
Yes.
Understanding where they are, who they're intending to influence, how they get there.
Yeah.
You know, tell me a little bit about how a person evaluates the circle that they're in right now.
Yeah, I mean, the first one is self-awareness. You need that first to evaluate your circle. So that needs to happen first. And I like to boil down self-awareness into 3 ingredients. So this is just something that I've kind of researched and looked into my own life of what really adds up to self-awareness. One is fear. So if you can really master fear and understand it, that's really helpful into unlocking your self-awareness. Fear is kind of like that little gremlin that's on the side of your shoulder whispering, you know, things that you don't want to be hearing. Probably to you right now, you're like, man, I hope I don't mess this up. That's fear. You know, also to me, I got that gremlin right there staring right at me with that, you know, that cheeky grin.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, just get out of here, man. Get out of here.
You can't do this. You can't do
yes. Just whispering stuff that I don't need right now. That's fear. And how do you break through fear? I think that fearless is something that no one is. No one is fearless. It's people can master fear and overcoming it and understanding it. And so it's really acknowledging fear when it's there, and how do you get over it? Most people see fear and then they tremble and then they turn away, or they become paralyzed, and then it stops them from doing the next thing. When really that fear is like that gate, you know, where it's like, hey, if you want to get to the next spot, you got to go through the gate. So fear is one. Another one is perspective. So if you can get a wide perspective and not look, you know, kind of through a paper towel roll on your perspective, I think that if you can see from a bird's eye view and have a more wider perspective, that's really going to help you in navigating and where you need to go. A lot of times people get in their own bubble and they don't think about it from a wider perspective. So they really start worrying about things when they don't need to worry about it. And that's something that a lot of people just, once again, the fear adds up, the perspective, if they're only in that bubble, then they're limited really on where they can go. And the last one is confidence. So confidence is so key because you need the confidence to break through, the fear and to really gain a perspective on things. Confidence is kind of like that suit of armor that's going to get you through to the next phase. And some people just within themselves, they lack that confidence, self-belief. And then just a fourth one I like to throw in there is self-love. If you don't love yourself, I think that those other three, it's so hard to even really navigate and figure that out. You have to love yourself first. And then just like, with, when you're on a plane and they tell you to put the mask on first before you help others, if it's going down, which hopefully that never happens. But, they tell you to put that mask on first, and they do that for a reason. So you should love yourself first before you really can share that with others. So
those are the reasons why I would evaluate my circle, right?
Correct.
I love myself. I have this confidence that I'm going to evaluate my circle. I'm willing to bust through the fear that I have in doing so. But how do I actually go about evaluating the circle itself?
Yeah, that's so really it's about analyzing and looking at who's in your circle. So from your friends, your acquaintances, your family, your coworkers, your spouse or partner, looking at that circle and saying who's there. And then simply, I tell this as a takeaway for people to do, what you could do today is by they're not going to see this sheet of paper. So take a pen, take a sheet of paper and write down all those names. And then just simply put a plus or a minus next to them. Are they adding to your life or are they subtracting from your life? Are they a pain to deal with? If I say a certain name, you're like, oh, man, every time I deal with Johnny, man, every time. He brings me in something that I don't need to be a part of, and, he's always just agging me, and he's not really promoting me. He's not really giving me that positivity in my life. That's a minus. A plus is somebody that's there for you, that's challenging you, that's, positive influence in your life. Just so simply put down the plus and the minus next to that name. And that's how you're going to start to evaluate that circle. To really show. And if you got more negatives than pluses, you can kind of add that to where are you at in your life? Are you happy with it? And then you can kind of put those two and say, what do I need to change within my current circle to really get myself prepared for the next one?
It feels like a lot of change agents are intentional. They think about what's before them, what situation they're in now, where they want to be, and they make intentional choices about moving toward that destination.
Yeah.
They're self-aware about where they are so they can make that choice. It seems like that's kind of what you're guiding us toward, right? Is to evaluate where you are now, be intentional about the relationships that you're in your
100%.
current state, and making active choices with courage to be able to choose.
It's because you have a choice. The only thing you don't have a choice on is family. That's it. And some family, you can still put up some barriers.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true.
So and some people walk around here acting like they don't have a choice. You have a choice to be involved with certain groups of people. It's your choice. You're making the effort every time to engage yourself with that. So as a change agent, you definitely have to say who's promoting me, and then who's taking away, because you want to set yourself up for success. When you look at your circle, this is one question I want to ask you. When you look at your circle from where you're at today, who was kind of that, main influence that got you to this point today?
Well, I think I learned a lot from my father about what it means to be a leader.
Yeah.
He and I are both introverted in a sense that we gain energy by being able to be away from crowds and people and to be introspective and thought-oriented, idea-oriented in who we are. But he really taught me to be able to turn on a ability to lead and an ability to understand a problem and charge toward it and do so in a way that's that's appropriate and ethical and good, but also in a way that's driving toward an objective and being a leader that holds the standard.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate learning that from him because it's made me balanced.
Yeah.
And throughout my professional career, I've had numerous influences that have allowed me to, in a sense, move from circle to circle, right? As you enter into your career, you start as an intern in some cases, and and your circle is these immediate people doing a task.
Right.
But where I think people have challenges in moving to additional circles is they don't see themselves more than that task. They see themselves as that task.
Yes.
This is something that I do, I'm good at it, I like it, and I'm going to continue to do it. And they may not even like it, right? They might just be doing it, So over the course of my career in growing concurrency and engaging, being a thought leader with enterprise customers, it's been becoming more and more comfortable engaging different tiers of leadership and being comfortable being part of that circle.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you feel like there's a certain degree of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like they're going to find out that I'm not good enough to be here, right? And I'm sure everyone else around that table sometimes feels the same way, right?
Yeah.
Based on the topic that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is I'm not good enough to be here, or they know more than me. I can't possibly be part of this in a productive way.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's so growing in the ability to transcend from one conversational spot to another, but also not leaving behind how you got there is an important step for me.
Yeah.
And so all those steps over that journey have been, instrumental in being able to climb it and also being thankful for the time being in each of those circles at the time that I was.
Yeah, for sure. So that was like you overcame those challenges, because I think everybody has that imposter syndrome all the time. And it's fun, and I like how you put where everybody around that table probably feels the same way, but you're thinking like, oh man, they just got it all together, and you're the only one. But really, everybody's thinking that, which is it's just true. I mean, everybody has to rise to the next occasion, for that. So thank you for sharing, because I love to learn people's stories and how they got to the place, and that's kind of what this book is all about. Is how did people get there? There is a chapter in there and when you talk about evaluating your circle, is finding a mentor. And I think you kind of touched on that with your father, like just somebody to help guide you on kind of, it's really, I like to put it to I'm a gamer. I love video games. So I'm gonna do a Mario reference.
Okay.
So basically, it's like getting that mushroom. It's like you're tiny Mario, and that mentor is gonna help you get that mushroom to level up.
There you go.
And get to the bigger version of yourself.
So you're telling people to go out and get mushrooms?
No.
What kind of podcast is this? What are we talking about?
Whatever they do on their own time is whatever they want to. But it's really, it's just that analogy of that mentor can help you get to that next stage of your life. And I think that it's just that. It's mentors, I feel like they're either in there for a lifetime or just helping you with a certain stage. Mm-hmm. So some mentors in my life have been there in the early stage, and then I've gotten new mentors to help me get to the next stage and the next stage. Because I'm at the end of the day, I'm not going to know how to navigate through everything. So when you're looking at your circle, also see who is a mentor for you. A lot of people don't have mentors, and that's kind of why they're just frantically just doing stuff.
Yeah.
Not knowing where to go. And as a change agent, you need to have a mentor that's going to help you get to that next spot and to keep you level-headed and to challenge you. Because sometimes you get in your own head about a lot of things, and it's like, you need somebody that's that words of encouragement or challenge to say, no, you're ready for this. Like, go for it.
So is that mentor one of the main assets you're using to decide what circle you want to be in the first place? You talked about like, all right, I've evaluated my current circle. Yeah. I know plus or minus where I'm getting energy from those folks, whether I'm, it's something that I'm contributing to or they're taking away from where I want to be.
Right.
How am I evaluating where I want to be?
Yeah.
Right? What are the intangibles or the assets that I'm using to be able to make that evaluation for myself?
Yeah, the mentor is very important, to figure out where you need to go next. I would also, I have a chapter in there called 5 Pillars. And that's really about like your non-negotiables. And that's really just discovering what do you want your goals to be? And then what are your non-negotiables to get there? So like, for instance, let's just use like a relationship for instance. So let's say somebody's trying to find a new relationship and they got out of a bad one, and there's like, I need to have, like, what am I looking for? Where am I trying to go? You can have a non-negotiable to saying that I want somebody that's intelligent, somebody that I can have an intelligent conversation with, go in depth and go deep, and on a conversational level, on an intellectual level. And that's something that's like at a core is like super important to you. So you would write that down as a non-negotiable to help. And now you're more clear when you're going for your goal, when you're out dating and stuff like that. Now you're looking for that. And you now know you're not going to compromise your non-negotiable. So if even somebody has a lot of good qualities and it's a good time, you're still going to look at it and say, if I can't have a deep conversation with this person, that's not what I want. That's not the goal. So you're going to really write down what your non-negotiable are. And I put 5 pillars as you write down your 5 non-negotiables. And you can do this from a career perspective of like, where are you trying to go? Write down that goal and then say, what is it going to take to get there? Because you have to map that out. And then you can start to say, okay, now let me structure my circle or the next circle to help support what I've written down as far as for my non-negotiables.
So if a person has gotten themselves, let's go back to maybe we did the beginning to an extent here.
Yeah.
So you're in your existing set of circles. You know that I maybe want to be over in this other set of circles, but right now I'm in this set. And I've made a choice that's engaged me in some negative relationships. Okay. How do I leave that? How do I get out of those relationships?
Oh, man, this is good.
That's maybe one of the harder things to do, I think.
That is extremely hard. So assuming that you're already self-aware enough to recognize that these are negative things and bad situations to be in, and how do I leave those? So I have 2 chapters in there. One is called Don't Surround Yourself with Bums.
Why? Well, unless you're helping them, right?
Unless you're helping them. And the other one's called Vampires and Shepherds.
Okay.
And so I'm going to kind of take this approach from those 2 angles. So you really want to, so with vampires, people that are draining that energy from you, they're bad relationships. There's something like, hey, I got to limit these to get to the next group. You want to put up boundaries, for that. So first you have to recognize those, and sometimes you're going to have tough conversations. Now, vampires come in many shapes and sizes. Sometimes they're family, sometimes it's coworkers, sometimes it's your boss, sometimes it's, it's all different types of people. So there's always going to be a different approach. Now I lay out different ways, depending on who they are, of what different approaches to take. But, some people you may just have to cut. Like, I'm done. You may have to have that conversation of like, I'm choosing me and I'm not going to deal with this anymore. And you can't call me, you can't get a hold of me, I'm done. So some people you got to cut cold turkey. Now, some people you got to put barriers up and start to slowly move away. And maybe those are people that are more closely to you. You have a closer connection with them. You really, they're just kind of making mistakes, but they're also being negative, and you're having to always save them all the time. Those are people you have to put up boundaries and say, this is, how you can contact me, or this is when I'm going to get involved, but I'm not going to continue to save you, all the time. So putting up those boundaries is really important. And then I would also say to wean yourself away from those people, start surrounding yourself with the positive shepherds that are there. So the less time that you're spending with these negative people or people that are not, positive in your life, you're going to have, what's your reason to keep engaging? If you keep start building your shepherds, your positive guides that are leading you to the next one, you're not going to have time to deal, with that negative influence. So it's also about pulling yourself away. A lot of times people find themselves constantly in that situation because they're literally putting themselves there time and time again. So that's something that will help you get there. And like I said, there's different reasons and different circumstances, for a lot of different people. If it's your boss, it's a little tougher. You might have to, be a little more strategic on how you go about that. But still, you can still navigate in certain ways, even with a boss that maybe is negative. But it's like maybe you have to start doing your thinking for yourself of like, what's the next step here? Where do I need to go? Is it here, or do I need to look elsewhere? You have to do that for yourself.
So let's say let's say you are in a professional setting.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're evaluating, I have ideas. My ideas in my current scenario are I'm surrounded by other people who are not influencing as much as I could be influencing based upon my capability to influence and my capability to have ideas which are positive for the organization that I'm in.
Yeah.
And there's a set of people that I need to be part of to
Okay.
be able to provide that influence. You know, what are the ways that a person skips between those circles in your mind? Like, how do they, and maybe more broadly, how do you plan to enter into a new circle in a not just strictly self-serving way, not in like a I'm going there just because I want what I want, right? I mean, an authentic, like non like vampire in a sense, right? Like, because
taking from others.
Yeah, I'm not just going here to take what I want and leave, right? In a parasitical sort of way, right? Like tell me about like how you see that moving between the circles.
Yeah, this is really good. I mean, I really wholeheartedly believe in always adding value to any circle. So that's step number one. I call it the backdoor approach. So typically, if you want to get into another circle, let's say this is a professional setting and I'm trying to get in another group of people that I know I can influence, I know I can change, I know my capabilities. The best way to do that is to have a backdoor approach. And that's really, now you can't just go right in the front door and be like, yeah, let me in. I'm here, I've been standing out in the cold, I'm trying to get in, I don't got a key. You have to take a backdoor approach. So you have to figure out on what's another avenue, another way that you can get in that circle by providing value to somebody else. So it's about what are their interests, what other things can align, with what you do and what's important to them, and then figure out a way in. So my example that I used to use for music. So when I was out performing. I could never, if I wanted to book a show, I could never just walk right in the door and, say, hey, can I talk to the bar owner or the club owner or the venue owner right now, and I want to talk about booking a show. You're not going to do that. And they're going to, you're going to get no calls. They're not going to, get back to you. It's going to be horrible. So I tried that. I was banging on the front door for a long time. And then I'm like, I can't do this. I got to figure out a backdoor approach to this. So my method was, how do I make myself attractive to them so that way I'm actually an asset to whatever their venue is. So then I started to call colleges, and I have some people in my life that have suffered from cancer. So I wanted to give back in that sense to cancer research. So I had 2 tours that were all about promoting for cancer. So I did 50% of my proceeds I gave back to cancer research. So I was going to colleges and then performing there at the colleges for Relay for Life. And so they have a big event. It's depending on how big the school is, how big the event is. But then, so I started to do a lot of those shows, and then I would go now to these venues and say, hey, I'm already in town. I'm already doing a show at, UW-Madison or University of Minnesota or whatever. I'm already in town, so I can bring 50 people or 100 people to your venue.
Smart.
So now I'm providing value. So you can do the same way in a professional setting. You have to figure out how to get in the back door to provide value to a circle. So that way they invite you in with open arms instead of you banging at the door and then you're like, hey, this guy's wasting my time. He's always calling me, always texting me, asking for favors. You have to prove yourself. You have to give something to get something.
Yeah, I think that's the key point.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of this happens quite a bit in our professional setting, especially when people are trying to move between areas. They're like, hey, just let me in. Let me. I've got. And it comes down to what am I bringing to this group that the group can benefit from, and who do I know that can tell my story?
Yes.
That can communicate that. Here's a set of things that this person's going to bring, and maybe it's even a temporary part of the group, the conversation. Right. You just want that first conversation. Start becoming a person that can provide that influence, and then you realize that that may be a spot that you can provide that value, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
What's the, maybe turning this to the opposite? I find that a lot of circles, once they fill up, they you see this in a room of a whole bunch of people, right?
Yeah.
They're all kind of enter into the room. You're all moving around, mixing, and all of a sudden you find these people and they start to gravitate to each other. Instead of being turned outward, they turn inward.
Yep.
And it becomes a certain degree an echo chamber
Yeah.
of the ideas of that group,
Yeah,
which can be good if they're reinforcing good things, but it also can shut out new ideas.
Yes.
So what's the responsibility of that group of when you're in a circle?
Yeah.
Think to be inclusive of members who aren't in that circle. What does that responsibility look like?
I think constant education, always self-educating yourself. If you're limited just to the beliefs of, like you said, that the echo chamber of just those thoughts, that mindset, you're limiting the outside perspective of what you could look at to say, who else could we get in here? Or maybe we need to think differently, about have a different approach. But the way how you're going to do that is by self-educating yourself and constantly always being hungry. I have, in my professional career, I've seen a lot of people, especially in leadership positions, where they kind of get stuck in their ways. It's like I know this and this is the way, there is no other way, this is the way it is. And you limit, really change. You're not, it may have worked 10 years ago, but we're always adapting, always changing, all the time. And you have to cater to that. And how you're going to do that is self-education. You got to constantly be hungry for knowledge and to figure out if there is new ways to have different approaches. And it may be unorthodox. It may be different than what you were thinking about, that worked 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You got to adapt and be able to have that open-mindedness. And have the willingness to hear out other circles. Like, I think if you're constantly networking and talking with other individuals, that's another way how that's going to constantly challenge your own thought and especially bring that back to your group. So even to that echo chamber, because now you've learned something different from somebody else that you didn't even think that would provide that kind of value. And also you're like, hey, that's actually an interesting approach. Let me bring that back to my organization and see how can I implement that.
Yeah, I think sometimes we we look for people that have qualities similar to us.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes that can be a good thing, and other times it's not so good of a thing, right?
Yeah,
If the world was just surrounded with lots of a person that looked like yourself, your own personalities, your own thought patterns, we wouldn't have a high degree of diversity of thought, and we'd usually miss things and we miss approaches. There's certain qualities about yourself that you feel like you bring to a group, but there's also holes in that, in where you are not as excellent. So groups require many of those elements in order to be successful, and often they require the challenges, right? They require to be challenged. So I feel like that's sometimes that we have to be intentional about.
You have to be intentional. That's the word, intentional about that, because you have to be outwardly seeking it. Because otherwise, it's so easy to get in the comfort zone and just stay there. You're stagnant. You're not moving. You're not changing. So you have to be intentional about always wanting and promoting growth.
Interesting. When you're, navigating different circles and you're experiencing the sort of move from one to another over a period of time, how often do you recommend a person reflect on that? Like, was that... Are they doing the plus minus exercise every day, or is like what does this look like in practice?
I mean, you should always reflect on it. I would say, not every day, unless you're literally changing circles that fast. But I would say, there's a lot of people that they have their core group. Their core group, they're always around, and that only changes over so often. So really, every year, I would look at that every year. It's just like in business, you have to reevaluate and really reflect on what's happening in your own business every single year. What do we do great? What do we not do so great? What are some challenges? What do we want to change for this next year? It's that same kind of reflection you have to do in your own life. And I feel like in business, we're always promoting that, reflection, what can you change after a project's completed? What's that post-mortem meeting looking like? Let's talk about this. But we need to do that with our own life. And I don't think a lot of people do, really reflect unless it's New Year's Eve.
Yeah. Well, I don't think people are intentional with their lives in general most of the time. Like, they just kind of live, right? And maybe that's not giving people enough credit, but there's a lot of just living. And the more that we know and think about where we really want to be, we can make active choices instead of passive choices.
Yeah.
A lot of people, maybe tell me what you think here. Like, I feel like a lot of people in circles are just there because that's where they ended up.
Yeah, 100%. You just ended up because that's just how because you feel like you're not in control. So you just ended up there and all of a sudden you blink and you're like, how did I get here? Mm-hmm. I'm just here and I don't even know why. This person's a good friend of mine that I've known, but actually over 10 years, I'm like, I don't even know if I like this person.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
How much in common do we actually have, except for going to, sport games or something like that? It's like, what am I really getting out of this? So yes, you have to reflect, and not just on New Year's resolutions. You have to reflect, constantly every year. But you have to reflect as much as it's going to help and promote you. To getting to that next phase.
Yeah, I was thinking about this kind of historical 3 types of friends. Friends of utility. Where I get something. Friends of where I just exchange of goods. A friend of where I like doing the same thing. Or recreation. Maybe I like doing the same activity. And friends of virtue.
Yes.
And that plays a lot in these circles. This idea that I have these relationships, and maybe even just being aware of the place that the relationship has in my life.
Yes.
That this is a necessary relationship, but it may not be where I'm gaining. Maybe it's not the one I'm gaining virtue, right? Yeah. Maybe they're just painting my
expectations.
House.
Yeah. Having expectations of what you want from that individual.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's fine if you just got a group of friends that you always get together every weekend and you're doing poker night or whatever, and that's your thing. But as long as it's helping you and that's a way for you to cool off and disconnect and just have a good time, then that's fine. But don't expect them to, be an advocate of other things in your life. Don't have this thing like, oh, I can't believe that, Jim didn't call me. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm going through this and I've got this going on. It's like, well, you just play with them on the weekends. That's it.
Isn't that where a person has to take control of their own life, right?
Yes.
You have to be able to be self-governing.
Yes.
And in understanding that maybe I'm going to go kick off and have, play Mario Kart over the weekend, right? And that serves its purpose, but that in a ungoverned state is not healthy, right?
Yeah.
A guy who does Mario Kart 24 hours a day, is not in a healtty state, right? Because he's ungoverned, right? He doesn't have discipline.
Unless he's making millions on Twitch.
Maybe. There you go. Yeah. He's a Twitch streamer.
Yeah.
Mario Kart Twitch streamer. There you go. But then he's still intentional, right? He's doing it because he's making money on Twitch.
Yeah.
We could do a whole other podcast on why that's even a thing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But yeah, I feel like it's so much about being intentional about the choices, knowing, being self-aware of the relationships that you have and making courageous choices, which you pulled out, the idea of being courageous.
Yeah, you have to be courageous. And I feel like one thing I want to have as a takeaway for people that are listening is because I feel like a lot of leaders and people in either executive positions are listening to this, and it's just so important for you to understand yourself and how you can add value to others, because you have to kind of lean into your strengths and have others to help support the weaknesses. As you're thinking about change. Because I feel like there are certain leaders that I've came across where it's like they just want to control, everything, and they're kind of just like control freaks. They're after the power. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you want to make real change, real impact, culture, stability, within an organization or even within your customer base, you have to really hone in on who you are and what that value proposition is that you can provide in the workforce. Because if you can just lean in real heavy into that and I'm not saying you can always learn more, you can always become more, but just lean into like what I call your superpower.
Yeah.
Lean into that instead of trying to, kind of be this everything to everybody. That's not how you're going to lead the ship. How you're going to lead the ship is leaning into your superpower and getting the Justice League around you for other things that you're not so good at. And then, and building up others. And I feel like doing that is going to help with your current circle and how you're going to get into other ones.
All right, last question.
Yeah.
So you're talking about changing your circle.
Yep.
You're talking about navigating that in your life and courage and being intentional and being able to make choices about what's right for you. Who influenced you to write this book? Who influenced you with the ideas to be self-aware, to create a idea like change your circle, change your life?
Yeah, there's a number of people. Definitely my parents, have definitely helped me navigate through that and just kind of instilled a lot of good principles, within me. And some I had to learn later on in life.
As do most of us.
That did not happen right away. Probably up to 23, 24. That's when it kind of, something started to click. I'm like, oh, this is what they were talking about.
I could learn from other people's mistakes.
It's like, oh, I don't have to make them. Okay. So that was one thing. And then I've had, different mentors just within my own life that have helped me. Definitely my former boss, Rick Hartline, he's definitely helped me unlock that and give me a lot of opportunity and chances where I didn't even deserve it for myself. But he still gave me that opportunity to show kind of what I could do. And through that, I kind of unlocked a lot of that self-awareness. And I also feel like certain events, I feel like that happened in my life as I continue to change my circle from music to IT to marketing and creative and being a business owner. And I mean, as a speaker and author, I'm just constantly changing my circle. And as I'm going through that, there's different events that are happening that's challenging me as a person, which is having me to unlock what that self-awareness is. And so I feel like events also can really help you and shape you, to who you are today.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Jamar.
Yeah.
And thanks for being a guest on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I love this podcast. I'm an avid listener. So yeah, thank you for having me and definitely having me as an option for the podcast. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again to our guest, Jamar Jones, his fantastic book. And also thank you to our listeners. We will see you next time on the Change Agent Podcast.